In the spring of 1942, the fate of the Second World War hung by a precarious thread. That thread was the Atlantic convoy system. Millions of tons of food, fuel, and ammunition were moving from the United States to Great Britain, fueled by the hope of an eventual liberation of Europe. But in the deep fjords of occupied Norway, a monster was waking up. The German battleship Tirpitz, the sister ship to the legendary Bismarck, was ready for war. If the Tirpitz broke out into the Atlantic, she could systematically dismantle the convoys, starving Britain into submission. There was only one thing stopping the German High Command from sending her out. She had nowhere to go for repairs. The only dry dock on the entire Atlantic coast capable of holding a ship of her size was the Louis-Joubert lock, also known as the Normandie Dock, located in the heavily fortified French port of St. Nazaire. The British Admiralty knew that if that dock was destroyed, the Tirpitz would be effectively neutered. But St. Nazaire was 6 miles up the Loire estuary, protected by shoals, sandbars, and a garrison of 5,000 German troops. It was defended by nearly 100 heavy guns. To the planners at Combined Operations, a traditional naval bombardment was impossible, and an air raid would be too inaccurate. They needed something different. They needed a raid so audacious, so unexpected that it bordered on madness. They called it Operation Chariot. The plan was deceptively simple in its concept, but terrifying in its execution. They would take an old, obsolete destroyer, pack it with several tons of high explosives, and ram it directly into the dry dock gates at full speed. While the ship acted as a time bomb, teams of commandos would swarm the shore to destroy the dock's pumping machinery and infrastructure. The ship chosen for this sacrifice was the HMS Campbelltown. She was an old American four-stacker destroyer, a relic of a previous era. To get her past the German coastal batteries, she had to be transformed. Her 2 rear funnels were removed, and the remaining 2 were cut at an angle to mimic the silhouette of a German Merle-class destroyer. Armor plating was bolted to her sides, and her draft was lightened so she could scrape over the treacherous sandbars that the Germans thought provided a natural defense against large ships. Inside her bow, hidden behind a false bulkhead, the engineers placed 24 depth charges, 4 tons of amytal, encased in concrete. The men chosen for the task were the elite. Under the command of Lieutenant Colonel Charles Newman and Commander Robert Ryder, 611 men, some sailors, some commandos, prepared for a mission from which many did not expect to return. On the afternoon of March 26, 1942, a small flotilla departed from Falmouth. It consisted of the Campbelltown, 2 larger destroyers for escort part of the way, and a swarm of small wooden motor launches. These launches were fast, but they were essentially floating fuel tanks, fragile and unarmored. For 2 days, the flotilla moved through the Bay of Biscay, successfully avoiding German U-boats and reconnaissance planes. As night fell on March 28th, the force turned into the mouth of the Loire. The lights of the German shore batteries began to flicker. At 1:20 a.m., the massive German searchlights snapped on, cutting through the darkness and catching the British ships in their brilliant white glare. A German signal station challenged them. A British petty officer who spoke fluent German signaled back, using captured German codes to buy precious minutes. He claimed they were a German convoy under fire, requesting permission to proceed. For a few heart-stopping moments, the German guns fell silent. But the ruse could only last so long. As the Campbelltown accelerated to 17 knots, the German commanders realized the deception. Every gun along the riverbank opened fire. The estuary turned into a nightmare of tracer fire and screaming steel. The wooden motor launches were shredded, turning into infernos of gasoline and magnesium. Inside the Campbelltown, shells tore through the thin hull, but the old ship kept moving. Commander Ryder stood on the bridge, ignoring the chaos around him, focused entirely on the massive steel gate of the Normandie Dock. With a deafening crash of grinding metal, the HMS Campbelltown struck the gate at 1:34 a.m. She didn't just hit it. She rode up onto it, wedging her bow deep into the steel structure. The primary objective was achieved. Immediately, the Commandos poured off the ship. These men were trained for precision destruction. Carrying heavy rucksacks filled with explosives, they sprinted through a hail of gunfire toward the dock's winding houses and pumping stations. In the darkness and smoke, the port became a chaotic battlefield. Explosions rocked the waterfront as the Commandos blew up the machinery that operated the massive dock. Lieutenant Colonel Newman landed with his men, organizing a perimeter and engaging the German reinforcements that were now pouring into the harbor. Despite the carnage, the Commandos were successful in their sabotage. But their escape route was vanishing. The wooden launches that were supposed to take them home were being destroyed one by one in the river. Realizing they were stranded, Newman gave his men a final order: to fight their way through the town and try to reach the open countryside of occupied France. As the sun began to rise over St. Nazaire, the firing slowed to a sporadic crawl. Most of the Commandos had been killed or captured. The Germans, believing they had won a significant victory, began to inspect their prize. A large group of German officers and soldiers climbed onto the deck of the HMS Campbelltown, which was still wedged firmly in the dock gates. They mocked the British for what they thought was a failed attempt to destroy the dock with a mere ship. They searched the vessel for hours, but they never found the hidden explosives. At 10:35 a.m., the time delay fuses reached their end. A massive explosion tore through the morning air. The 4 tons of amytal in the Campbelltown's bow detonated with such force that the ship was obliterated. The massive steel gates of the dock were ripped from their hinges, and the sea rushed in, carrying the wreckage of the ship and the bodies of the German inspectors into the dry dock. The Normandie Dock, the only place on the Atlantic that could have housed the Tirpitz, was destroyed. It would not be repaired until years after the war had ended. But the drama wasn't over. A day later, 2 delayed action torpedoes fired by a British motor launch into the nearby submarine basin gates also detonated, causing further panic and leading the nervous German garrison to open fire on their own French shipyard workers, believing a fresh uprising had begun. The cost of Operation Chariot was staggering. Of the 611 men who took part, only 228 returned to England. 5 of the raiders were awarded the Victoria Cross, the highest military honor in the British Empire, marking it as one of the most decorated actions for its size in history. The strategic impact, however, was undeniable. The Tirpitz remained bottled up in the fjords of Norway for the rest of her life, never able to threaten the Atlantic convoys because she had no safe harbor to return to for repairs. The greatest raid of all had succeeded. It was a testament to the cold courage of men who were willing to sail a wooden fleet into the mouth of a fortress. It remains a story of impossible odds, a floating bomb, and a sacrifice that changed the course of the war. In the silence of the now peaceful St. Nazaire Harbor, the memory of the Campbelltown remains a reminder that sometimes the most daring plan is the only one that can save the world.